And so what's the new show? The show you say you're touring from September, right?
September to either November or December. So that new show is called No One Gets Out Alive. My last show was called the Super Fun Good Time Show because I was just like, I need to announce to people this is going to be a fun time, and I've kind of gone back on that, and I've called it another like depressing sounding show. No One Gets Out Alive. It's designed to sound like a threat.
Yes,
but it's going to be this really cathartic experience. I know the way I write is I know what the show is. I know it's like a plot of a film. I know what elements need to be in there to tell the story that I want to tell. Even if it's not like a literal story, it's like the series of events that needs to go in what order for the show to work. That chunk there, what all the topics are going to be, and then I know what the ending is, and I kind of know what the beginning is, and then I write the material. And so and the material will be whatever I'm thinking about at that time, but then you kind of massage it to be this thing, or you like fold experiences in to create like a narrative. But so I'm at that point where I know what it's going to be. I just need to write it now. Yeah, and that's brilliant. Yeah, because you just get on stage and you just kind of like, I always have like a A4 page of notes, and I just think, well, that's not an hour. And then I'll get through a third of it, and you go, "That's an hour." Yeah.
It's interesting how it does. Katie, my wife, is just working on.
We did a preview last week. Yeah.
So she's just working on a new show for the first time in ages, and she's so working really hard at it and nervous about it, and I'm sort of going, but also just trying to enjoy it. But also, the more you do this, but I literally have got to the point where I've done 15 shows, and you sort of it's quite easy to. Yeah. It becomes easy just to put a show together, or you at least have the confidence that the show will emerge. Yeah. And this current show just came together like so easily. It's just like ridiculously easily for me. So it was, partly because I'd written the book about it, and partly because it was just a story about what happened to me. Yeah. But yeah, so I think again, just that experience, you kind of forget that it can be, when you're starting off, it's intimidating, but then actually an hour isn't very long.
I find an hour easier than 5 minutes. Yeah. I like a 5 minute is never a satisfying 5 minutes. It's always sort of like I'll get halfway through an idea where I'm almost just sort of contractually filling my time with 5 minutes. Yeah. But with an hour, it's like, the first time I did an hour, I was just like, that went by so quickly. Yeah. I did it at Angela Barnes' gig in Brighton Funny Farm. And I did it, it just went by so quickly, and it was so comfortable. And when you go back to 20 minutes or 10 or 5, what's 5 minutes? Yeah. I just love the format of doing it an hour, but you get better as a comedian as you go. And, before the pandemic, I hated stand-up because I had so much stuff to remember. My memory is terrible. And then after the pandemic, all my TV work kind of went away. And then I had like bits that came in, like Father Brown and stuff like that. But so it's just like, I've got to be a stand-up comedian. That's my job again, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're a fantastic stand-up comedian. So and you are a great actor as well. So I can understand why you kind of
but I was
got distracted. Not distracted, but why you went down that route.
But I not that I fell out of love with stand-up. I always got so nervous. Yeah. And I realised that a lot of the nerves most of the nerves in everything, acting, anytime you go on stage, it's just sort of like worrying that you're going to forget what you're going to say, or and so I just got rid of that. Yeah. After the pandemic, and I got more reliant on I'm not necessarily on podcasts, but I'm a funny guy, and I try and just be funny in life. Yeah. As like a muscle that you're exercising, and then when you go on, and not necessarily I've said something funny, I'll write that down, but just I've said something funny, and now I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to be funny again, and then I'm going to come off stage and I'll be and just to keep it as part of the flow of your life, as opposed to, it all matters for this 20 minutes, right? And I just found that taking like the importance out of the gig, it's made me much better at the gigs. Yeah. And I love the gigs, and I've got material, but if I can go on stage and throw all of that out the window and make the room, laugh without the material, that's a win, And then if you do the material and it's like a jumping off point for something else, then I see that my act is, or maybe the material is a vehicle for my act. Yeah. And I think that's good.
It's sort of an interesting, to realise that, because it does feel so important, and as a comedian, you obviously, it is nerve-wracking, and to begin with, you want to make people laugh, you want to make people happy, but I think it is weird how when you don't worry about it so much, it becomes much better. And I make a joke I sort of make a joke in my show about having had cancer that, I know the little things don't matter anymore. But then at the end I say, I hope you've enjoyed it, but if you haven't, it doesn't matter. It's really not important. If you haven't enjoyed it, it's like 90 minutes of your life. It's not important to you. You had a bad time at a gig. I've had cancer, so, grow up. But it's sort of, but actually
that's the best way to end a gig. But didn't you like me? I've had cancer, grow up.
So, I mean, if you had cancer as well and didn't like me, then
that's undeniable, that ending to your show.
But it's, but it's actually very liberating, but it is true, that to not, I think like you can spend so much time as a comedian worrying about that one person doesn't like you, or someone tweets you and says they think you're shit. And actually you want that person to think you're shit. And the one person in the audience who isn't enjoying it isn't as important as the 100 people who are enjoying it. So like, you can become focused on the wrong thing. So I think like to free yourself to go, okay, I trust that I'm good because I've been doing this for a long time and it seems to still be going on.
Yeah.
So you've got to trust that you're good. But it's I think however confident you are, and obviously your stage persona is very big and very confident but like sort of, you feel like you could easily wound you with, there's a vulnerability to it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the word, vulnerable.
Yeah.
Vulnerable. Well, sometimes there used to be a lot more vulnerability, and I kind of like forgot I did that part, and then I was mainly angry for a long time. Yeah. But and now I'm just sort of like walking on, and I'm smiling and I'm happy, and then when I'm on stage, that aggressive side of me, it comes out, but it comes out in a way that lets everyone in on the joke.
Yeah.
And that's like a thing where you've learned that over time, where it's kind of like, my first ever material was about my frenulum, which is the banjo string on a penis.
Yes.
It got torn in a sexual encounter, and that was I did it at a workshop thing, and they said, you could just do that on stage. I did it for about a year.
Right.
And I loved it because you get such a massive reaction from the audience. But after a year, I was just like, they're not laughing. They're squirming.
Yes.
And they're going, oh. And you're getting a huge reaction out of the audience, but they're not enjoying it. and so then it's kind of like that with the anger side of it. It was just like I was giving them an experience, right? Yeah. Obviously, they were all safe. Nothing ever was going to happen to the audience. But they were scared in the room. And I like that because it was like you come into my shows and it's like a meat grinder. And then when you leave, it's like you've survived something, right? They feel incredible. But then I was like, actually, what I really want is for my mum to have full confidence in recommending me to her friends, right? And so I think like, at the moment it's kind of like a happy balance between all of those things.
But again, I think that's another, like I think when I did the Someone Likes Yogurt tour, which I think I still think of that as one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was a great show, but it was deliberately trying to annoy. So like the people who liked it loved it, and the people who hated it. And it was the Daily Telegraph worst comedy experience of the year for that year. The Daily Telegraph.
Someone Likes Yogurt
picked it. Yeah,
I've still got the programme.
Someone picked it as the guy picked it as the worst thing in the whole year of comedy. And I think he'd seen a bad show in Edinburgh. I think he'd seen a show in Edinburgh where it didn't catch fire, and he hadn't reviewed it or anything. But he just waited to the end of the year. I was at home with my parents on Boxing Day, and they're going, "Oh, the review of the year. I won't be in this because I haven't really done it this year." And then I was there. The worst thing that happened. You go, oh, okay, But I kind of did realise when I did it, because I did all the shows again, and I just thought it's sort of so relentless, and it's trying to wind people up, and it's trying to be annoying.
Someone Likes Yogurt.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
But there was the yogurt bit was like half the show, and then there was another half that was similar grinding routines. There was one about the Pope that went on way too long, and there was one about having sex with monkeys, and there was all sorts of things in there. But I just thought. I remembered when I toured it to art centres, I remember sometimes just audiences just looked unhappy. And then as I've got older, you sort of think, if they're parents and that's their 1 month, that's their one night off, like in 3 months, I want them to go away like having had a laugh.
And come back next year.
Yeah, and come back. So like I think you can put anger and you can put, you can be deliberately obtuse and annoying. But actually I think you can do those things. And I still would do those things on a smaller scale. But you also need to make sure it's a funny show.
I stand by all the shows I've done. and I think they're all good.
Yeah.
And there's a standard that they haven't dropped beneath, but they're not all fun.
No.
And what I want to do is I want to be good and fun.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that's weird about someone like Sugar. I've always thought of that as one of. It was 2004, wasn't it?
2004, 2005, maybe, somewhere around there.
And I saw that. What venue were you in?
I was in the Pleasance, the one above the box office. Pleasance above, is it?
And
upstairs.
I sat on the second row with my mate, and he really needed a wee all the way through it. and he wasn't even enjoying the show at that point because he needed to piss so bad. And then at the end, he just got up and legged it. And then he wrote to you and he said, sorry about that. I did enjoy the show. I just needed a wee. And then you wrote back. And then I wrote to you. And I was just like, I'm friends with the guy that needed a wee. But I always thought that show was brilliant. I've still got the programme.
Well, anyway, it's interesting. It's the one that, and it was, we put it out on a DVD when people were buying DVDs, but it's the one that sold the most out of any show.
Oh, it's so good.
Done.
Well, I maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I remember it as 3 20-minute sets, which made an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was in Edinburgh, but I think probably when I toured it, it became 2 hours.
I just thought it was really economic. You go, 20, brilliant, that's a routine. 20, that's a routine. 20, that's routine. I was talking to Katie because we did a preview last week or 2 weeks ago, and she's trying to work out how to kind of put her material together.
Yeah.
And I said, someone like Sugar, it's 3 20-minute routines. And it's kind of and she's married to you. And I'm kind of like going, the show. It was such a big influence on me. And I just think, because I don't do straight stand-up, but I think it's a really good example of how to structure a stand-up show.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. It's nice to know that you disagree with the man from the Daily Telegraph. But anyway, it was
Telegraph gave me 5 stars, and the audience that came in after that were awful.
He also said it makes you wonder if Richard Herring has ever been funny.
Well,
So there you go.